Hi friends, today let's talk about accessory nerve, the cranial nerve 11. So let's just start. Before going into the detail, let's talk about an overview of our accessory nerve. As we can see, we have two different origin of the accessory nerve. One is the cranial part and one is the spinal part. So the spinal part, the spinal root of the accessory nerve is coming from your upper C5 segments of your cervical spinal cord, as we can see in this green area, coming from different segments of your spinal cords, uh, C1 to C5 area of the cervical medulla of your spinal cord. And here we can see we have the cranial root of your accessory nerve coming from your medulla oblongata. So, to be more specific, it's coming from your nucleus ambiguous, the two-third part, inferior part of your nucleus ambiguous. And as we know, nucleus ambiguous is a group of neurons situated in your medulla oblongata in the reticular formation of the medulla oblongata. So over there, nucleus ambiguous is situated and giving the giving motor neurons for pharyngeal for your pharynx, for your larynx, and your soft palate muscles to be innervated along with your vagus nerve over here. So the cranial part of your spinal accessory nerve joins your vagus nerve over here, and whereas your spinal part of your accessory nerve ascends up, going into your foramen magnum, inside your foramen magnum, and along with your cranial root of your accessory nerve, they both get united in the jugular foramen over here. We can see the jugular foramen, and uh, from over there we can see we have your vagus nerve over here. Vagus nerve has two ganglions. One is your superior one. This one is known as your jugular ganglion, or the superior ganglion of your vagus nerve, whereas this one is the inferior ganglion of your vagus nerve, also known as your nodosum ganglion. So the cranial root, after after getting united with your spinal part of your accessory nerve, uh, they both get united in the jugular foramen. And then after exiting the jugular foramen, the accessory nerve, sorry, gives two branches. One is your internal branch, which is going inside your this ganglion of your vagus nerve, also known as ganglion nodosum. So the internal root goes along with this vagus nerve and further supplying your um, different muscles in your pharynx, larynx, and your soft palate. Whereas this external branch, or the spinal accessory nerve, we can say, um, after exiting your spine or after exiting your jugular foramen, goes and supplies your sternocleidomastoid muscle and your trapezius muscle over here. And so we will discuss further in detail. Again, this diagram illustrating the course of your spinal accessory nerve. As already mentioned, the spinal root of the accessory nerve is coming from your C5 segments, C1 to C5 segments of your spinal cord over here. See, so here are the different rootlets coming and going, ascending and going, entering your foramen magnum over here. Whereas here we have the cranial root of your of your accessory nerve, cranial root, coming from your medulla oblongata, to be more precise, from your nucleus ambiguous. So nucleus ambiguous role is to supply all the muscles of your gives innervation through your accessory nerve and the vagus nerve, and gives and innervates through these two nerves, the cranial nerve 9 and cranial nerve 10, and innervates muscles of your soft palate, pharynx, and your larynx. Also, it gives preganglionic fibers to innervate the postganglionic fibers, going parasympathetic fibers to innervate your heart. So here we can see the cranial root and the spinal root getting inside your jugular foramen over here inside. They both get united uh, uh, as one accessory nerve, and after exiting the jugular foramen, they form two branches. One is your internal branch, internal ramus, or one is your external branch, the external ramus. The internal branch further will give laryngeal branches and the pharyngeal branches, which will go in the different areas of your pharynx, larynx, and soft palate. Whereas this external branch, this one is external because it's innervating the um, muscles, sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscles. So this is all about the internal ramus and the external ramus. Again, this diagram again showing the same thing. We have the different um, roots of your spinal roots of your accessory nerve, and here we have the cranial root from the medulla oblongata, both of them making a single accessory nerve, the cranial root and the spinal root, both getting united and making accessory nerve in the jugular foramen. And after exiting the jugular foramen, the accessory nerve gives an internal branch and one external branch. The internal branch goes inside the ganglion nodosum of the inferior ganglion of the vagus nerve, and external branch going to your sternocleidomastoid muscle and your trapezius muscle to innervate them. Whereas the internal branch, along with the vagus nerve, giving pharyngeal branches and the laryngeal branches. This will go towards the pharynx, and this will innervate the larynx. Uh, so yes, let's go to the for the next slide. Again, here we can see this is a diagram illustrating your jugular foramen over here. So as we know, jugular foramen is divided into three different compartments. One is your two of them are for your venous, and one is for your nerves. So one is for your this inferior petrosal sinus over here, and one is your for internal jugular vein over here. So all these three compartments. So the middle compartment we can say is for the all the nerves. So nerves which are passing through the jugular foramen are your 9, 10, 11, shown in this diagram too. So here we are talking about the accessory nerve. So here we have the cranial part, cranial roots, and the spinal root. Cranial root coming from nucleus ambiguous, spinal root coming from your C5 segments of your C1 to C5 segments of your spinal cord. Both of them coming over here, these few rootlets formed, getting united in the jugular foramen. Here we can see the unification. Here's the all the accessory nerve. Now here is the jugular ganglion of the vagus nerve, or the superior ganglion of vagus nerve, and here we have the inferior ganglion of the vagus nerve, also known as the nodosa ganglion. So here the spinal accessory nerve giving two branches. One is your external branch going to your sternocleidomastoid muscle and the trapezius muscle, and over here we can see this one is your internal branch going to your this nuclear ganglion nodosa of the vagus nerve. And from there further, vagus nerve carries the fibers of the uh, accessory nerve, the cranial root fibers, and going towards your giving your pharyngeal branches and laryngeal branches to supply different areas of your internal neck. Talking about the vocal cords areas and your pharynx and larynx and your soft palate, which we will discuss further. Here again, we can see in this diagram, we can particularly we are talking about the spinal accessory nerve. After exiting your jugular foramen, the spinal root, the external branch, is coming out of your jugular foramen over here, and medial over here, and medial to your styloid process is coming medial to your styloid process, and here we can see that course of the accessory nerve. Now accessory nerve passes below under your sternocleidomastoid muscle, and penetrating it and supplying it and coming outside on the anterior surface into the posterior triangle. As we can see, we have the posterior triangle here. Posterior triangle is boundaries are posterior aspect of your sternocleidomastoid muscle and the anterior part of your anterior surface of your trapezius muscle. These two muscles form the posterior triangle. So we must know the course of the accessory nerve, spinal accessory nerve in the posterior triangle. So basically, the accessory nerve, as I already mentioned, coming medial to your to your stelloid process, and going posteriorly, from your digastric, crossing your digastric muscle, the posterior belly of your digastric muscle, and coming under the coming beneath your posterior to sternocleidomastoid, and then penetrates it and coming outside over here. Now this exiting point of your spinal accessory nerve from your sternocleidomastoid muscle is around 5 centimeter below your mastoid process over here. So one must know 5 centimeters somewhere here, and then it travels oblique over here and enters your trapezius muscle. And this entry point of accessory nerve into your trapezius muscle is again around 5 centimeters above your clavicle. So this is how you can know the entry and the exit point of the accessory nerve in the posterior triangle. Uh, 5 centimeter below your mastoid process, and 5 centimeter above your uh, clavicle. This is the oblique course of your accessory nerve. Again, the same diagram showing here we have the stelloid process. Now, accessory nerve is meet coming out of after coming out of your jugular foramen, the spinal root, the external branch, coming medial to your stelloid process, and coming under your sternocleidomastoid and penetrating it, and coming outside, coming and entering into your posterior triangle. This area is around 5 centimeter below your mastoid process over here. And then here we can see we have the levator scapulae muscle. So this spinal accessory nerve is on the on the surface of your um, above surface of your levator scapulae muscle. So of course we have the deep fascia, which is covering your levator scapulae. So your this spinal accessory nerve, the spinal root of the, or the external root of the accessory nerve is on the levator scapulae muscle, and here it's entering into your trapezius muscle and further innervating the trapezius muscle. This area is around 5 centimeter above the clavicle. Again, here we can see the accessory nerve over here, the all the oblique part of the spinal accessory nerve. Here we have the levator scapulae muscle. So we can see sternocleidomastoid muscle has been dissected and um, turned up. So we can see the uh, course of spinal accessory nerve in the posterior triangle. Again, in this diagram, we can see we have two parts of the spinal accessory nerve, the cranial root and the spinal root. Here we have the spinal root, and here we have the cranial root. So after coming from your foramen magnum over here, and from medulla oblongata, both of these roots of the spine of the accessory nerve, they get united and form a single accessory nerve, and then accessory nerve divides into external branch going to your sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscle, as already mentioned, and your internal branch along with your vagus nerve going and giving the laryngeal branches and the pharyngeal branches. So here we can see branches going to the soft palate, towards your pharynx, and here towards your larynx. So therefore internal branch is important in all your voice and swallowing and everything, so very important. Again, in this image we can see the jugular foramen. Here we can see the cranial root, and here we can see the spinal root coming from here. Here we can see few rootlets of your cranial root coming from your nucleus ambiguous of the medulla oblongata, from your posterolateral sulcus, posterolateral or dorsolateral sulcus of your medulla oblongata. They both of them get united, forming your accessory nerve. Accessory nerve, then accessory nerve giving branches, giving internal branch over here, this one internal branch and this one internal branch, going towards your nucleus nodosum and towards your vagus nerve. So internal root of the spinal accessory nerve of the, sorry, of the accessory nerve, the internal root is carried through vagus nerve, and whereas this one is the external branch going towards your trapezius and the sternocleidomastoid muscle. As already mentioned, we have two branches of your cranial accessory nerve and the spinal accessory nerve. Let's discuss. So, talking about the cranial accessory nerve, we have over here pharynx. So all the muscles of the pharynx are innervated by your vagus nerve or the cranial accessory nerve, we can say. Only exception is your stylopharyngeus muscle over here. Now this stylopharyngeus muscle is only one which is innervated by your cranial nerve 9, that is glossopharyngeal nerve. So this one is the only exception. Rest all these muscles of the pharynx are innervated by vagus nerve plus your cranial accessory nerve, cranial root of accessory nerve. So that is nucleus ambiguous, we can say, from the beginning. So as we know, in the pharynx we have a few different muscles. The three main muscles are your constrictor muscles. One is your superior constrictor, one is your middle constrictor over here, and this one is your inferior constrictor muscles. Now inferior constrictor muscles is further divided, also has two parts: the thydopharyngeus and the cricopharyngeus over here. So these are the main three muscles of your pharynx. Then along with that, we have three muscles. Along with these constrictor muscles, we have three longitudinal muscles. Here we can see salpingopharyngeus, palatopharyngeus, and the stylopharyngeus. As already mentioned, the stylopharyngeus muscle, this one over here, this one longitudinal muscles, and these all three are longitudinal muscles. Only stylopharyngeus muscle is an exception, which is innervated by your glossopharyngeal uh, nerve. um, Rest salpingopharyngeus muscle as a role, it keeps your eustachian tube patent, it keeps your eustachian tube open. So that's the importance of them. And constrictor muscles, as we know, they help in help the pharynx, helps in swallowing food. So very important. All the constrictor muscles, they all elevate the pharynx, so their role is to elevate the pharynx. Let's go to the next slide. Again, we have six different type of muscles: three main constrictors, superior, middle, and inferior constrictors, and three helping muscles. We can say the longitudinal muscles, the stylopharyngeus over here, as we can say, the longitudinal, and here we have the palatopharyngeal and the salpingopharyngeus. Now, salpingopharyngeus is the one which is helping to keep the eustachian tube open. So now coming to the palate, as we know, we have palate. We have five muscles over here in the palate, soft palate to be more precise. We have the tensor palatine, and all these muscles are innervated by your again your cranial root or the vagus nerve. All these two nerves innervate all these muscles, five muscles. Only exception over here is the tensor palatine muscle. Now tensor palatine muscle is innervated by your mandibular branch of a trigeminal nerve, that is V3, we can say. So mandibular nerve, we can say, is innervating tensor palatine. Rest four muscles, group of muscles, are innervated by your cranial root of accessory nerve, or we can say the vagus nerve. Now the role of these muscles is, as we can see, tensor palatine, it keeps your palate in tension. It tenses your soft palate, therefore helping closing your nasopharynx with your oropharynx, and hence while eating food, if your nasopharynx is closed with your oropharynx, therefore food can't regurgitate into your nasopharynx. It will be quite embarrassing, as we can think. Suppose you are eating food and the food enters while eating food, the food is coming out of your nose. So it will be really embarrassing. So thanks to this muscle, it keeps your nasopharynx and oropharynx closed while you're eating food. And here we can see again, here we can see the left levator palatine muscle. Again, it helps in closing your soft palate, your nasopharynx with your oropharynx. Here we have the palatoglossus muscles. Now palatoglossus muscle over here, it pulls the tongue forward, and therefore helping in the first phase of your deglutition, that is swallowing. As we know, there are a few different phases, three different phases of your deglutition. and we can say five instead. But this one is the first one is the deglutition phase is uh, through helping is through this palatoglossus muscle, because it pulls the muscle tongue forward, so therefore food can enter inside the esophagus. So, and then we have the palatopharyngeus muscle. Now palatopharyngeus muscle, it helps in your it helps in second phase of your deglutition, that is swallowing. Then we have the musculus ovalis. This one pulls your ovula upwards, and therefore any ipsilateral, any problem to the musculus ovale, you can see the deviation of the uvula on ipsilateral side. Any problem in these muscles or in the nerve of the vagus nerve or the cranial accessory nerve or the nucleus ambiguous will create ipsilateral problems. It can cause dysphagia and ipsilateral problems. And if we are talking about the larynx, then we can have dysphonia and other different problems. Again, a view of uvula and different muscles of the soft palate. Here we have the hard palate. Here we have all the soft palate over here. Again, same diagram showing hard palate and the soft palate with different muscles, the tensor and the levator palatii. All the muscles of the palate are, as I already mentioned, are innervated by your cranial nerve 10 and the cranial accessory nerve, except tensor palatii, which is tensor palatii is the only muscle in the palate region which is innervated by mandibular nerve. That is the V3 branch of your trigeminal nerve. Now coming to the larynx. As we know, larynx, we are basically talking about your vocal cords. So here we have few different muscles. Uh, few of them are intrinsic muscles and extrinsic muscles. The extrinsic muscles, basically we are talking about because they are linked to your hyoid bone over here, and hyoid bone, and further dividing them, the extrinsic muscles can be further divided into your superior suprahyoid and the infrahyoid. Suprahyoid muscles are over here: mylohyoid, stylohyoid, digastric muscles, and infrahyoid we can have sternothyroid, sternohyoid, all these muscles. These all are known, the infrahyoid are also known as your strap muscles. So as we can see in the neck area, all we have laterally placed these muscles, and omohyoid also over here we can see. So uh, all these muscles are the strap muscles, but while talking about the cranial nerve 11 or the vagus nerve, we aren't talking about the extrinsic larynx muscles, laryngeal muscles. Our focus is on the intrinsic laryngeal muscles. Intrinsic laryngeal muscles, again, we have main five intrinsic laryngeal muscles. One is your cricothyroid, and cricothyroid can be considered as extrinsic laryngeal muscles also, because it's the only muscle which doesn't have any attachment to your any of these laryngeal cartilages. So cricothyroid, but still is it's considered as an intrinsic laryngeal muscle because its role is with the vocal cords. So it helps in the toning our voice. So therefore, cricothyroid can be an exception to your intrinsic laryngeal muscle, but still is considered as intrinsic laryngeal muscle, even though it doesn't have any connection with any of these cartilages. So, cricothyroid again is the very important muscle over here. We can see now this cricothyroid muscle here is the cricoid cartilage over here, and it's important because the cricothyroid, this muscle, it gives the tone to your voice. Therefore it tenses your vocal cords, so hence giving a tone to your voice, and therefore it's also known as your singers muscles. So very important muscles, um, um, for giving a tone to your voice. And again, another exception was the cricothyroid. One must know is the only muscles is the only muscle which is innervated by your inferior laryngeal nerve. That is your your external laryngeal nerve, which is a branch of your superior laryngeal nerve. Yeah, as we know, which is itself is a part of vagus nerve. So as we know, vagus nerve is divided into superior laryngeal nerve, which gives your internal branch and your external branch. So the external branch is the one which is innervating this thing, your cricothyroid muscle. Yeah. So superior laryngeal nerve, as we know, is a branch is coming from is a branch of your vagus nerve. Vagus superior laryngeal nerve gives two branches, internal branch and external branch. This the external branch of the superior laryngeal nerve is the one which is innervating your cricothyroid muscle. Rest all of these muscles, all the rest four group of muscles are innervated by uh, your recurrent laryngeal nerve, and to be more precise, a branch of inferior laryngeal nerve of your recurrent laryngeal nerve. So this one over here, we can say this is the superior laryngeal nerve, and all of these are your inferior laryngeal nerve. Inferior laryngeal nerve coming from your recurrent laryngeal nerve, and your the superior laryngeal nerve gives your external branch, which innervates your cricothyroid muscles. Now again, these different muscles, as we can see, the posterior cricoarytenoid muscle over here, this one. Now this posterior cricoarytenoid muscle is the only abductor. This one is the only abductor, one must know, of the all the muscles in the larynx. So this one is the only abductor. All right. So therefore, it gives a volume to our speech. Is the only abductor because it broadens your vocal cord area. It broadens it. So therefore, it gives volume to our speech. All right. It won't. Our voice will be much more. We can say kind of masculine. We can say, or something much more. Not so much. It should. It would be much more deep voice. So it gives a volume to our and only abductor. Rest lateral cricoarytenoid muscle over here, and your thyroarytenoid muscle over here, transverse and oblique. Lateral and transverse and oblique, which is not shown here. Transfer, here it is. Transfer, and this one. These one are the adductors. Now the main adductors will be your lateral cricoarytenoid muscle. Now this one narrows, and the transverse and the oblique muscles are not showing. Oblique arytenoid muscle not shown. These transverse arytenoid and the lateral cricoarytenoid, these are the adductors. This one is the main adductor um, of your sorry, vocal cords. Yeah, lateral cricoarytenoid and this one. So I already mentioned this one is your abductor. This one is your lateral cricoarytenoid muscles. Now lateral cricoarytenoid muscles along with your transverse arytenoid muscles. These are the muscles which adduct. This one abducts. This one gives volume to your voice. Then we have thyroarytenoid muscles over here. Now thyroarytenoid muscle gives softer. It will give softer voice. This one, thyroarytenoid muscles over here. All right. So lateral cricoarytenoid along with your transverse arytenoid muscles. These two will give volume to your muscles and volume to your voice. This one, thyroarytenoid muscles. This will soften your voice. Posterior cricoarytenoid is the only abductor, and here we have the cricothyroid which gives a tone to your voice. So it tenses your voice. Again, here we have the oblique arytenoid muscle. So here we have the arytenoid cartilage over here. So their connection with the arytenoid cartilage, that's why they are the transverse arytenoid and the oblique arytenoid muscles. Right. So these arytenoid muscles will narrow along with your lateral arytenoid muscles. They will narrow your laryngeal orifice. That is, they will narrow your vocal cords, and therefore addicting your vocal cords and therefore giving volume to your vocal cords. Again, we have the larynx over here. Now, this is a spinal accessory nerve. As we can see, spinal root of the accessory nerve. We have cranial root. We have the spinal root. They both are getting united over here, giving your And then after exiting your jugular foramen, giving your cranial root and the spinal root. Now the spinal root innervates your sternocleidomastoid and the trapezius muscle, whereas the cranial root along with the vagus nerve will innervate different muscles as we talked about, as in the palate, as in the pharynx, and in the larynx. So that's all. Have a good day. Hope you understood something. Have a good day. Thanks a lot. Bye bye.